The most devastating move you can make is not raising your voice, not crushing an enemy, not seeking revenge. It is vanishing. It is silence. It is leaving the stage without ever giving the final line. Machiavelli understood that human beings are not addicted to love nor to pleasure, nor even to revenge. They are addicted to certainty. The mind craves closure the way the body craves air. It wants a clean ending, a conclusion it can store neatly and walk away from. Without it, the mind begins to unravel. It circles endlessly, revisiting the same moment, replaying the same words, inventing new explanations in the middle of the night. And that cycle doesn't stop. Because when you deny closure, you deny peace. And when a person has no peace, they remain tied to you long after your presence has disappeared. This isn't kindness. It isn't communication. It is psychological leverage at its most ruthless form. Think about the last time you were left without answers. Maybe it was a relationship that ended without explanation. Maybe it was a betrayal that was never addressed. Maybe it was a friend or colleague who cut you off without a word. On the surface, you moved forward. You worked, you laughed, you lived. But in the quiet, your mind returned to the same unsolved puzzle. Why? That unanswered question is not weakness. It is power. Because the person who left you hanging still lives inside your head. You may not want to admit it. You may even hate them. But hate is still attention. Obsession is still loyalty. And as long as they hold the missing piece, they hold control. Machiavelli's brilliance was understanding this simple but brutal law. People don't truly want happiness. They want answers. They want to know the reason. They want the final page. And when you don't give it to them, their story cannot end. That is why silence becomes the most brutal weapon in the arsenal of psychological warfare. Most people are taught to explain themselves, to offer apologies, reasons, context, justification. Society tells us to communicate clearly and end things properly. But who does that serve? Not you. It serves the other person. It frees them. It cuts the knot. It hands them the key to their own escape. By explaining, you give them the ability to put the book down and walk away lighter, calmer, released. And in that act, you lose your grip. But when you leave without explanation, without closure, without a final word, they remain chained. They think of you when they don't want to. They remember your silence as if it were louder than words. They revisit moments in their sleep. And without realizing it, they keep you alive. This is the law of unfinished stories. Every complete story dies. Every closed door fades. Every explanation gets digested, processed, and forgotten. But an incomplete story, a half-open door, a mystery never explained, those live forever. That is why Shakespeare's plays ended, but Machiavelli's lessons did not. Because Machiavelli spoke in principles, not conclusions. His writings leave gaps, invite reinterpretation, deny the comfort of a final word. And that is why they still echo centuries later. The same principle applies to people. Never give them the final page. Never give them the complete ending. If you walk away with silence, you don't just end an interaction, you create a ghost. And ghosts live longer than the living ever do. Here's where the law turns from philosophy into a weapon you can actually use. Silence on its own is not always enough. If you vanish without leaving an imprint, you are simply forgotten. If you disappear without shaping the moment, the world fills in the gap and moves on. That is not power. That is irrelevance. The true Machiavellian move is to engineer your departure so that it becomes unforgettable, a wound that never heals, a riddle that never solves. And like all strategies of power, there is a sequence, 4 deliberate steps that transform absence into psychological leverage. Step 1. Create a peak emotional experience. Before you disappear, you must give the other person something their mind cannot release. This could be deep praise, a vulnerable confession, an intimate connection, or an intense surge of passion. It doesn't matter what form it takes. What matters is that it is sharp, elevated, and memorable. Contrast is the secret ingredient. If the everyday rhythm of life is flat, you must create a spike so high that it towers above the ordinary. The human brain is wired to hold on to extremes. By giving someone that surge, you are etching yourself into their nervous system. They will never forget the way you made them feel at that moment. Step 2. Leave at the high point. Most people exit when things are declining, after a fight, after frustration, after boredom. That is predictable, and predictable endings are easy to process. But when you vanish during the peak, when everything feels powerful, passionate, or positive, you violate the expected arc of the story. The brain cannot comprehend a disappearance at the climax. It was preparing for more, expecting continuation, craving the next chapter, and suddenly, nothing. This creates not just confusion, but addiction. The mind becomes hooked on what it never received. It replays the high, waiting for the drop, waiting for the explanation that never comes, and that waiting becomes your leverage. Step 3. Say nothing. No explanations, no it's not you, it's me, no I just need space. Every word you offer is a rope that allows the other person to climb out of the pit of confusion. Every explanation gives them a way to process, heal, and release. Machiavelli would say, the more you explain, the more you free them. The less you explain, the more they remain bound. Silence is not emptiness, it is a mirror. The less you give, the more their imagination does the work for you. They invent reasons, they project meanings, they create narratives, and every story they tell themselves only tightens the chain. You don't need to feed them answers, their own mind becomes your accomplice. Step 4. Optional reappearance. This is advanced and it should never be overused, but if you ever choose to return, you do so without explanations. A single like on a post, a vague emoji, a short message with no context. These small sparks stir the ashes without giving them the fire they want. And in that moment, their obsession reignites. They believe they are close to answers, but you vanish again. You are not the hero of their story. You are not even the villain. You are the unresolved character, the cliffhanger that never resolves. And unresolved characters live longer in the psyche than anyone else. Notice what's happening here. With just silence and timing, you invert the dynamic completely. They spend hours, days, even years thinking of you, talking about you, trying to solve you. Meanwhile, you have already moved on, untouched by the turmoil you left behind. They waste energy spinning theories. You conserve energy and build freedom. They bleed out in questions. You rise in calm indifference. This is not cruelty for cruelty's sake. This is positioning. This is psychological asymmetry. The weak try to dominate through noise. The strong dominate through silence. And here lies the deeper law. A finished story dies, but an unfinished story never does. Most people want to be remembered accurately. Machiavelli would laugh at that. Accuracy fades, memory erodes, logic forgets. But mystery never fades, because it is never resolved. It becomes a loop the mind cannot escape. And if you learn to engineer that loop, you don't just control people in the moment, you control them long after you've disappeared. If you're ready to take these strategies beyond theory, check the pinned comment. The link I left there is the next step to becoming truly untouchable. Now let's step deeper into the aftermath, the psychological consequences of withholding closure. This is where silence stops being passive and becomes an active force, a weapon sharper than any insult, punishment, or revenge. Because when you deny someone the ending they crave, you don't simply walk away. You turn their own mind into a prison. You set in motion a cycle of obsession that feeds itself, and the more they resist, the tighter the chains become. Look closely at human nature. People can endure pain, betrayal, even humiliation if it comes with clarity. If someone screams at them, curses them, explains exactly why they're being abandoned, eventually the mind processes it. Anger fades, pain dulls, closure stitches the wound. But what happens when the wound is left open? What happens when the knife is pulled out without cleaning the cut, without sealing it shut? The bleeding never stops. Every memory reopens the injury. Every quiet moment becomes an echo chamber of unanswered questions. They cannot heal because they do not know what they are healing from. That's the brilliance of silence. It transforms into a wound that never closes. Think about relationships. A lover who receives a long message full of explanations cries, processes, and eventually moves on. But a lover abandoned without a word, left with nothing but unanswered questions, that person never stops thinking of you. Every new relationship becomes a comparison. Every conversation returns to that shadow. You linger like a phantom in their future because the past never gave them peace. Now think about enemies. A rival who knows exactly why you struck them can prepare for the next battle. They hate you, but they understand you. A rival left in silence without explanation cannot plan. They replay every move you made, searching for hidden meaning, inventing strategies you might use, preparing for ghosts instead of reality. Silence disarms them, not by weakening their body, but by corrupting their mind. This principle even applies in the professional world. A colleague you openly disagree with may respect you or at least know where you stand. The conflict ends with clarity, but a colleague left hanging in silence, unsure of your thoughts, unsure of your next move. They spend weeks second-guessing every word, every action, every glance. Their uncertainty becomes your dominance. Fear fades, pain fades, threats lose their edge. But uncertainty, that never fades. Uncertainty keeps the wound fresh because the mind cannot close the loop. And here is the paradox that Machiavelli would admire most. The stronger the person, the more they suffer under silence. Why? Because strong people are used to control. They are accustomed to answers, resolution, certainty. When you deny them closure, you attack not their weakness, but their strength. You confront their ego, their self-image, their need to understand. And so the ones who appear powerful begin to unravel first. They spiral, they obsess, they return to you in their thoughts and actions, not because they want to, but because their mind cannot release what it cannot finish. The fortress of their willpower becomes the cage of their obsession. This is why silence is not cruelty. It is strategy. It is leverage. Every time someone begs for honesty, for clarity, for just one final explanation, what they are really asking is, "Please set me free." And that's the secret Machiavelli whispers through the centuries. Never hand them the key. Because freedom for them is weakness for you. Peace for them is the end of your influence. To maintain power, you must deny mercy, deny closure, leave the question mark where the period should be. The mind cannot let go of a puzzle unsolved, and in that endless loop, you remain eternal. When silence moves beyond individuals and into the social arena, it transforms into something even more powerful: reputation. A single person left without closure suffers quietly. But when groups notice your absence, when they see that you never explain yourself, you stop being just a person. You become an image, a myth. Scarcity always creates value. The one who speaks less is listened to more. The one who disappears without warning becomes unforgettable. People whisper, speculate, invent stories in your absence. They do your branding for you. Machiavelli understood this. What's rare is precious. What's unclear is magnetic, and what's unresolved is eternal. When you withhold closure, you don't just dominate one mind, you control the room. They orbit you not because you demanded it, but because your silence forced them to. And in a world obsessed with explanation and transparency, the man who refuses to explain rises above them all. If you're ready to take these strategies beyond theory, check the pinned comment. The link I left there is the next step to becoming truly untouchable. Power is not about noise, it is about gravity. The one who explains gives release, but the one who withholds becomes unforgettable. Closure is mercy, and mercy weakens control. When you leave a door half open, when you vanish without the final word, you force others into a loop that never ends. They replay, they question, they rewrite the past 1,000 times. And while they are chained to the story, you've already written a new one. That is the essence of Machiavelli's law of psychological leverage. Never give them closure, because closure sets them free. Silence keeps them yours. Do not explain. Do not finish the sentence. Do not give them the weapon to forget you. Walk away and let the absence speak louder than your presence ever could. In the end, people don't remember those who gave them peace. They remember the ones who left them restless, unfinished, obsessed. And that is how you turn silence into domination and mystery into immortality.